You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Koku. Today's show, before we get into today's show, let me give the customary free biz shout out. Free business shout out goes to Stephanie Renee's Salon, located at 1614 West Main Street in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The zip code there is 49006. You can reach Stephanie Renee's Salon at 269-459-6535. That's 269-459-6535. They're conveniently located inside Cali Beauty. Next up is amymarie.maven.com. That's AMYMARIE.MAYVENN.com. They also deal in natural hair care products. Their mission is to provide high-quality products with unparalleled shopping experience, world-class technology and hair care products, etc. You can find them at amymarie.maven.com. Next up is Melanated Conscious Society. You heard me talking to Kepra L on my podcast several weeks back. You can find them at www.melanatedconscioussociety.com. melanatedconscioussociety.com is a mentor Black community empowerment organization in Jacksonville, Florida. Make sure to follow them on all social media platforms. And if you have a skill or talent related to marketing, like social media marketing or graphics or whatever you can do, or reach out to them and offer your assistance. It's for a good cause. It's organizing for our people. Lastly, Glennae Davis on Twitter. She could be reached at GLENNAERN@gmail.com. I'll just read what she sent me. She said, "Hello, thanks for your reply. I'm Glennae Davis, an LA-based registered nurse, author of a critically acclaimed memoir, Yet Here I Stand, creator and chief nurse of Nave's Vision, a healthcare media empire where we provide the healthcare education and planning to bridge the gaps of knowledge between discriminated, disadvantaged people facing employment discrimination and the healthcare industry, resulting in having a strategic plan with the medical support they need to no longer be victimized, merchandised, or marginalized by the system." I currently have 2 products available for your listeners. Number 1 is the memoir, and number 2, a free health checklist. So guys, if you're listening, make sure reach out to Glennae Davis. Once again, her email address is GLENNAERN@gmail.com. Also, I want you guys to take a listen to this.
Greetings, family. In case you didn't know, the Bitter Medicine Podcast hosts an online book club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will host a call-in show book discussion live on YouTube. This is a great dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. It's been said that if you want to hide anything from Black people, put it in a book. Do not allow this to be true anymore. Head over to www.bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace.
And there you have it. In our next episode of the podcast, we will be discussing with Carl Hezekiah the book by Steve Biko, I Write What I Like. Today's show is a good one. I discovered this brother on YouTube, and I wanted to have him on to talk about his experiences and the initiatives that he has undertaken himself in Africa. And at this time, I'd like to welcome into the show RJ Mahdi. RJ Mahdi, are you there?
Yeah, how's it going, man?
I'm great, man. Thanks for appearing on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. RJ Mahdi is an African-American repatriate to Senegal, West Africa. He is the founder of Mahdi Media and the Made in Africa Project, which you can find at www.madeinaafricaproject.com. You could also find him on YouTube. Just look up King RJ Mahdi, Mahdi, and you could follow him on Instagram at King RJ Mahdi, King RJ Mahdi. King Mahdi, you are an American, correct? A black American.
Yes, sir. By birth, anyway.
Okay, yes, sir. And at some point in your life, you decided to return to your homeland, to our homeland. Can you tell the listeners how that came to be? How did that come about?
Well, I guess to catch it up to speed, my first interaction with the continent was about 17 years ago. In 2001 and 2002, I spent a year here as a teenager studying and just really kind of taking the time to find myself. So it was at a time, obviously, for a young man growing up in a city like Atlanta, where it was an opportunity for me to get out of the environment that was being so detrimental to so many of my peers and use the time to kind of develop and plan out the rest of my life. So after returning to the States, then it was always a goal of mine to eventually return again to the African continent and spend a considerable amount of my life here and to contribute and give back. So more recently in 2012, around the time that my son was conceived, my wife and I set our goal to come and relocate back to the continent once he was born. And by the grace of God, we saw it through, and we've been here 5 years ever since.
Interesting. So I'd like to just humor me for a minute. I'd like to just understand the mindset. Did you grow up in African consciousness? Were you a conscious youth who decided to repatriate to Africa, or what was it that really sparked that idea?
Well, I would have to attribute that to my parents. My parents were definitely Pan African in their beliefs, even prior to me being born. They were involved in different community organizations, like the Garveyites, and from that thought or that school of thought to where they already had that kind of as we call it now, woke mentality, right? So definitely I was definitely exposed to African culture early. My family celebrated Kwanzaa every year when we were children. We participated in a lot of spiritual community activities. And I think that definitely carried on throughout my later years to further connect me and kind of remind me of my place and my purpose.
See, that's the thing. It's so important as parents to really expose our children to certain things. So one of the things I work on is a think tank that that's working towards creating an African-centered curricula. One that can be, once completed, should be able to be used in an actual school, or it can be used by parents at home to supplement the common education that they receive here in the U.S. And the thing I try to get people to focus on is that the curricula needs to reconnect the child to their community, the community that they live in, the Black community, and also their African tradition. And so it's nice to see that your parents actually lived that. You know what I'm saying? Like they actually had you. I'm not sure if you have siblings or not, but they had you.
Yeah.
Exposed to Africa, not ashamed of it, like so many of our people seem to be kind of ashamed to be from Africa. So I commend your parents. Salute to them.
Thanks, man. Thanks. They definitely deserve it. And, it was a huge part of our youth, and I definitely see the benefits of it today.
Did they also make the trod back to Africa?
No, neither of my parents have ever made it back.
Okay.
When my mother sent me in 2001, one of the things that motivated me to go, because obviously at that time as a 16-year-old boy, I wasn't excited about going to Africa myself. But one of the things that motivated me to go was her telling me that me going was her going, and it was her way of going back. So she, gave everything that she had, invested, every penny she could pull together to make that a reality for me, so that she could also kind of vicariously live through my journey. So definitely want to give much credit to my mother, who, sacrificed a lot for me to have that experience.
Wow, man, that's amazing. I'm originally from the Caribbean, and one of the things we used to talk about in the Caribbean is that, whenever someone goes to Africa, they must bring back a bag of dirt so that the elders in the Caribbean can actually touch the soil,
Absolutely, and I definitely did that as a teenager.
You did?
Brought back a nice sack of dirt with me, and my mother held on to it for years.
Man, that's positive.
Absolutely.
That's positive.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be doing. If you have someone, maybe they're too, maybe they're older, they can't travel, whatever. Because Africa is a bit of a travel to get to.
Yeah.
Bring back that soil.
And it's not just a travel, but it's also it's tough on some people sometimes. So the climate, changing climate, food, and environment. So it is tough physically on us sometimes. So some of us who can't make that journey for those reasons. We have to still kind of fulfill their purpose, in it as well.
Absolutely. So you had a taste of Africa 17 years ago, and 5 years ago you actually moved to Senegal. Why, if you don't mind me asking, why did you go to Senegal?
Well, Senegal is a place that number one has always been active in the connection between us, especially as African in the North American diaspora. Number one, 20 million of us left from this coast of Senegal to come to the U.S. So that's the first part. So we all know that there are multiple exits that we traveled out of the continent, Congo and Angola, and, Cape Coast, Ghana, and these places, but they all had different routes, right? So the people of Central Africa and Congo and Angola, they ended up in Brazil, some 100 million of them, a lot of them. The people that came out of Cape Coast, Ghana, and Benin on the southwestern side of the head of the continent, mostly ended up in the Caribbean and Central America and the islands. But we know that the routes that the ships took from Gorée Island, Senegal, specifically, were sent to Jamestown and Savannah, Georgia, and other ports in the U.S. So for those of us who have the United States, lineage in our families, we can, 9 times out of 10 trace at least the exit point to here. It doesn't mean that we're originally from here, but this is the point in which we left the continent. So that's one reason. The other reason is there's a community here on the ground, a community called Medina Bay, Kaolack. This is a very prominent spiritual city. And the leaders of that city for years had been connecting with African Americans on a spiritual and educational level. A sheikh, a good teacher of mine who passed in 2008, Sheikh Hassan Cisse, in the 1980s, 1988, opened a school for African American youth to study in his village, in his city here. And that school, for the past 30 years, has been it's played a huge role in the development of tons of African American youth, more than you can imagine. Tons from Detroit, from Washington, D.C., from New York, countless young brothers and sisters from Atlanta, where I'm from, all traveled here over the years and spent years here, not just, a semester or a school year. We're talking 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, some of them longer, where they spent here on personal development, studying various languages, building knowledge of self, and just, learning that oneness of the Creator, and then taking that back to the States and using it to advance their lives and their communities. So I was a member of that specific community. My elder brother-in-law and other close family members had traveled here before. When it was my turn, I had to come in and have that same experience, and it was huge for me as it was for them. And one of the things that we see with many of the young people who did study here, they've gone on to do great things. Many of them even, larger, more impactful projects and things than what I'm doing. Some of them are controlling huge, impactful organizations and being there to support their communities. That's just something that, when you talk about seeing the effects of something and then building on it, that's something that our community has done here specifically for, like I said, about 30 years. And I'm from that line of intellectuals, if you will, and just here to do my duty and follow up on the work of all those who came before me and added to it.
So we're going to talk about the work that you're doing over there in just a moment. Before we get to that, though, I know that some of my listeners are salivating because they want to know what were the trials and tribulations from the American side of repatriating to Africa. They'd like to know, as do I, what were the ups and downs that you went through when you decided to leave this place, America, to go back home?
There's tons of challenges, obviously, and I think the biggest challenge among us is what we choose to hold on to.
Right.
The first thing most people think about when they talk about repatriating, especially just moving out of the country, period, is what am I going to do with everything I have? Right? We're so attached to our physical, belongings. A lot of times those things anchor us and hold us down unnecessarily. We live in a time when we have to be limber and mobile and be able to maneuver to access our greatest potential and resources. So the last thing we need is to be held down by something, especially if it's holding us down in a place where we're not able to access those resources and potential. I think one of the initial challenges, and not so much a challenge for me because I'm far from, I guess what they would call like a hoarder, right?
Right.
I don't hoard. I don't collect anything. I'm very minimalist. But when it came time to leave the States, that was one of the initial concerns, was to just, liquidate the things that we had. And they're just things, right? So furniture, excess clothing. All of us have tons of clothes, right? Our
Yep.
closets are full of stuff we haven't worn in season after season after season. Getting rid of those types of things and just letting them go, even if it's just giving them away, or yard sales, or anything. Just getting rid of that stuff and freeing ourselves from that kind of excess baggage. So it took us about a year or so to really just liquidate all of the physical belongings that we had. Other than that, I mean, the only other challenge, sometimes you have that resistance from family or loved ones, people who don't want to let you go and do what you need to do, and sometimes they don't understand exactly why you're doing it. So obviously we have resistance from family who is concerned, if we're concerned for our safety or concerned for stability, and people want to keep you close and make sure that so that was a challenge, but not to the point where it hindered us or made it too difficult. I think that we got through that transitional period fairly easy, and being that I knew other people who had been here on the ground, it was somewhat easier for me to at least have a cushion or a landing pad, to fall on when I got here. So again, the city of Medina Bay and our collective community there was able to help us in our transition, and when we got here and finding a place and all of these different things that it takes to get settled in. So that made it a lot more easy on us for sure.
And if you don't mind, how did you from America? How did you get connected with that community back home in Africa that made it easier for you to transition?
You mean from back in the day, or?
Yeah.
This is the same community that I came to back then when I was a teenager.
Oh, it's the same community from 17 years ago. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you and your parents link with that community 17 years ago?
Kind of hard to say.
Okay.
It was part of it. It's kind of one of those things that once you're in a community, you kind of all share the same resources, right? So, like I say, we kind of came into the community knowing a lot of people who had already been interacting here, and my mother, who at the time was a single parent in my teenage years, was looking for opportunities or options to help me as a young man.
I see.
In a world where like I say, we as young black men were kind of being wiped out, right? All of my peers were being sent to prison as teenagers, or losing their lives for pettiness, and there was a lot of things happening in our communities to where my mother wanted options. So as she networked with other mothers and other community leaders, they led her to this community and said, hey, here's an option for him. And again, she put her own investment up and said, it's time for you to go.
Okay. That makes more sense. Okay, that makes sense. Right. Okay, so now you're in Senegal. 5 years ago. The most common language in Senegal is French, I do believe, right?
Yeah, that's the colonial language here.
Yeah, the colonial language, but I think Wolof, is it Wolof?
Wolof is the more common language. So Wolof is the most widely spoken language, whereas French is the government and institutional language.
Okay. Was there a language issue when you went there? I mean, I'm imagining the community was filled with repatriates as well. So was there any language issues when you got there?
For my wife, yeah. I had been speaking Wolof since I was here 17 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I never lost my Wolof even after I went back to the States. So it was a little easier for me. But for my wife, she struggled for a while to learn the language. Definitely living in the community that we lived in, it helped because there are a lot of English speakers there.
Yeah.
And we live with, collectively in the community with them. And but yeah, that's one of the initial challenges most people find. But I think because of the necessity to be able to communicate, most people put their back against the wall and kind of, buckle down to learn it. So, even since we've been here, we've helped other repatriates to learn Wolof, and we've put together different programs where African Americans who are living here, we put them with a local to do language exchange, right? So you teach him English, he's going to teach you Wolof at the same time, right? So we began putting programs together like that, and that helped a lot of people. But it's just something that you have to be proactive about. So it's definitely challenges going into any situation. The main thing is to just come up with a solution and try and get through it, as easy and painless as possible.
When you were in Senegal 17 years ago, you learned Wolof and you came back to the States, and you only moved back, you only moved permanently to Senegal 5 or so years ago. How did you practice or keep up with your Wolof in between those two periods?
Just communicating with Senegalese, Wolof speakers in the States. Again, the community that we, come from, there's quite a bit of Senegalese living there. When I was a little bit older, I lived in New York City. I worked in a Senegalese restaurant in Harlem.
Oh, really?
Many of you may know about Harlem's Senegalese community.
I do, actually. I'm actually in New York, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Les Ambassades?
Yeah, of course.
Senegalese restaurant on 8th Avenue.
Yes.
Yep. I was the manager there for a while, actually.
Really?
As I lived in New York, building my media career. Yeah. So that gave me an opportunity to use my Wolof on a daily basis around Wolof speakers. I mean, they literally hired me because I spoke Wolof, which was crazy. So yeah, definitely. Just using it. Language is one of those things. As long as you use it, you'll never forget it. So you definitely have to just kind of keep it rolling off your tongue, and you get better and better at it.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I learned Spanish many moons ago, and I don't use it, so I've lost it. So yeah, that's why I asked that question.
Yeah. You'd think you'd get some practice with Spanish in America.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't go around the Spanish speakers in America. So
I heard that.
So you arrived in Senegal 5 years ago with a wife and child, I think, right? And what was the first hardship, and what was the first pleasantry that you received when you arrived?
Man, so the first hardship, I would say, is probably adjusting to the food and environment change, which takes a toll on you physically. So for most people who've lived outside of the country, in any country really, when you go to a different environment, the food and the air, it'll sort of detox you. So coming here, especially, coming from America where we eat a lot of processed foods and fatty foods and sugary diets, when you come here and you begin eating the more natural farm-raised food, the non-GMO stuff, the fruits and vegetables rather than ice cream and cookies, your body does considerable detox. So in the initial weeks as we got here, myself, my wife, and my son, we all got sick. It's one of those things that is to be expected. You go through it, and it's when you get through it, I mean, you feel lighter on your feet, right? Yeah. You feel better. You're kind of happy you went through it.
Absolutely. Yep.
But yeah, so that was one of the initial hardships, was just kind of getting around that. It's like when you're first here, you're scared to drink the water, you're scared to eat foods that was, cooked or prepared a certain way, and you're trying to tiptoe around, eating the local stuff, but it's inevitable. It's kind of one of those things that really you should just go ahead and let your body take control of. Yeah.
And just to interject for my listeners, this is true pretty much wherever you go. If you're when I left the Caribbean and I came to New York, the first week I got here, my eyes were burning me like crazy, like real bad. And so it's just that it's just that an environmental shock. There's a culture shock, but
It's
there's
trying.
also an environmental shock that you go through.
Mhm.
What the brothers
It's
talking
the
about?
change in air
Changing
quality,
air
change in
quality,
water
everything.
quality, the
Yep.
change in all of these things. Your body's not used to it, so it'll react in a way that, either A, rejects the
Yep.
incoming stuff if it's bad, or it'll expel whatever's bad within you to make room for the new and cleaner. So, it's a natural thing, but, it's
Yeah.
tough. It takes about, maybe a week, of your time. But once you get through it, like I say, you feel a lot better.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the hardships, you were starting to talk about the not the hardships, the
Yeah.
pleasantries.
The pleasantries. One of the initial pleasantries is definitely the spiritual aspect of being here. Being around people who commit their lives to the spiritual essence of life, who commit their lives to the community and its development and being fair and kind and feeding one another without question. It's funny. We come from an environment, especially in the U.S., where, for instance, if you're eating, right, and a stranger comes up or somebody walks up to your door or walks up on you, you're gonna hide your food, right? You're gonna,
Yeah.
But here's the opposite.
Yeah.
Everybody will offer you food no matter how much or how little they have.
Yeah.
It's even a really bittersweet sometimes. Sometimes you'll even see somebody who has very, very little, right? But you'll maybe approach them. Maybe you just walked into their store or into their space, and they will, almost force you to eat with them. It's like break bread with me. Here I'm offering you this as an offering, as hospitality, as they call it here, taranga, right? Which is the kind of hospitality you experience here, which is selfless, and that spiritual and moral selflessness. To me, is the biggest pleasantry here, and not just when we first came, but ongoing. Just being in a place where people, genuinely care about your well-being. People visit you regularly at your house, right? And another thing we in America, like, right, don't pop up at my door,
Yeah.
right? Call me first before you come, right?
Yeah.
Here, people come to see you. They come check on you on a regular basis. Hey, I hadn't seen you out in a while. How are you? How are the kids? How's your family? Do you need anything? Is everything right? So it's a very communal environment where people genuinely look out for each other and they hold themselves to a community standard that you can thrive in and that your family can feel safe and involved in. So that continues to be an ongoing pleasantry here in Senegal.
Just out of curiosity, have you ever been to the Caribbean?
No, but my family actually originates from the Caribbean, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have family on my mother's side from St. Lucia and Barbados.
Oh, nice. I've been to both places as well. Okay. So
Nice.
the reason I ask that question is because, a lot of people in America don't recognize this, but in the Caribbean, that's what you just described, the pleasantries. That's how it is in the Caribbean. People just show up at your door to hail you up and say hi and see how you're doing, and you share them a plate of food, give them a drink of water. In fact, it's
Yep,
not
yep.
uncommon if some guys are doing some work in a yard close to yours, it's not uncommon for them to ask you
To
for.
go there and offer them some.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for
Yeah,
them to ask you for water and you give it to them.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's
Even
good
even
to
if you
hear.
don't ask, sometimes they'll see you out there working, and
They'll
the
come and bring
mother
it.
of the house will say, "Hey, take those guys a bowl. Here, take
Yeah,
them a plate." You don't even know them; they're working on your neighbor's house. And, hey,
yeah,
take them some of this cold drink.
yeah,
It's,
yeah,
it's very common.
yeah, yeah. That's nice to hear, man. That's not that makes me interested as well to come and see that part of the homeland as well.
And what that does, and also what you just confirmed, even with the Caribbean, what this tells us is that this is our culture.
Yes.
This is how we are supposed to interact and thrive with one another. We've been forced into communities and situations and environments that have hardened us in the U.S. They've hardened us and hardened our hearts and souls to each other because we've had to fight for so long. We've had to compete for everything. We've had to, be in these environments where we're uncomfortable and we're not in our ideal space, right? So they've made us to be, as people say sometimes, crabs in a barrel, or they've made us sometimes into a situation where we'd rather compete against each other than collectively build. But when you come somewhere like here, or even in the Caribbean, as you say, you see our natural state and our natural, collective communal environment, and you see how much it's normal. It feels normal. It feels like it's right. You just feel like, man, this is how we've supposed to be, and we see that all the time here. These types of epiphanies, we have them all the time. Like, man, you see how they handle this? Like, if we could handle the things like this in our environments in the U.S., we'd be a lot better off. We'd be able to deal with each other better. We'd be able to get through our issues better. The elders here still are the decision makers and the advisors, right? The young people here still sit at the feet of their elders on a regular basis and listen to them give stories about the history. Listen to them give speeches about community life and morals and marriage and business and how to handle your children, right? This is something we see on a daily basis. This is something we see on a very regular basis. You could be anywhere in town and you'll see an elder sitting under a little tent with his nice comfortable chair and 100 or so community members, most of which are young teenagers, young adults, sitting at his feet, listening to him give them the game, right? And then you look at our communities in America and you say, who does that for us?
Yeah.
Right? What elders are giving us the game? Right? We're missing that. We're missing that so bad that now, it's almost like the young people are not only the decision makers but the advisors. But as we can see how that would be unbalanced for us, right? We're learning everything from rap music. And all the rap music is made by 18, 19, 20, 25-year-olds, right? So, it's good music, but those shouldn't be our advisors. Those shouldn't be the people who are guiding us in our life purpose and principles and the morals that we should set our lives by. And then that's how you come up with things like, the different lifestyles that we see that are detrimental to us. Right. So we have to get back on our natural playing field so that we can attain our proper station.
If you were in America saying that, one of the things that happens here now, I've noticed, and I've been in the States now for 20 years. I've noticed that, actually for 22 years, I've noticed that when you say things like what you just said, people say, oh, why are you against the youth? And it's not about being against the youth. The youth, they don't really have much by way of experience to share with us. They need to learn, not to dictate, not to teach so much. They need to learn.
Yeah, and there's a time and a place for it all, right? So there is a time for the youth to be put in a position of responsibility.
Of course.
There's definitely a time for the youth to step up and engage and be responsible for certain, happenings in the community. And that you see that here also. But before a youth can be given the responsibility of the advisor to a community, right, they have to go through certain things in life, right? We can't have a young man who's not married with any kids telling everybody how to marry and have kids, right? Yeah. You've never been married before in your life. You want to advise the community on marriage, right? We'd rather get that information from somebody who's been married 40, 50, 60 years like we see here. These elders been married since, before all of us were born and birthed many kids. So now we can sit down and hear that wisdom, and say, this is what we need to apply to our marriages. And that's why in America, we see the marriage rate is so bad. That's why we see so many single parent homes. That's why we see so many broken families, because who's advising us from a standpoint of experience? All right, what long-standing married or long-standing parents or long-standing elders are sitting us down and giving us the game on how to keep a family together, on how to sustain ourselves, on how to run a household, right? We're not getting that. So now you just have a bunch of young people who think that they can give each other the game, and they're telling each other, money over women. They're telling each other, brothers ain't, ain't nothing, right? So they're telling each other a game, but it's not the game,
Right.
right? So what they're sharing with each other is how to ruin your life, because nobody from an elder, experienced perspective is giving them the proper direction, and that's what we see here all the time. That proper direction, that proper guidance, that proper advising is happening all the time, and it's a regular part of society. And it's you see the benefits in it. You see long-running marriages. You see families with multiple children sticking together, and raising farms and having properties, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So we got to get back to that.
I don't know how much you pay attention to what's going on here now that you're back home in Africa, but there is a increasingly anti-African narrative going on in the black community here, where black folks are talking down against our brothers and sisters in the continent. And I was just curious to know, did you experience any anti-African American narratives or sentiments when you arrived in Senegal?
Never.
You see, that's the thing. That's the thing that kills me. We always do what we're not supposed to do over here. But continue. So you never received anti-African Americans?
Nah. What we experience here is open arms in all rights. Obviously, you're gonna have issues with people, but it never on this side seems like an anti-American thing. When it comes to that dynamic, people here are almost more excited to invite you in, to include you in things, to participate with you, to strategize with you, even to just build with you. We get people all the time here. Once they find out we're American, they tell us, "Look, I just want to talk. Like, can you got a minute? Can we, share with me? Tell me about America. Tell me about, how did you get here? Tell me, how did you even find us?" And one of the number one questions that we get here on the ground is, where are the rest of you? So many people ask. I mean, we can be in a taxi cab. You can be, anywhere in a social environment, and when they identify that you're American and that you've had enough, sense, so to speak, to find here or to be able to come here, the one thing they ask is, well, why aren't the rest of you coming? Where's the rest of you? Why don't we see more African Americans coming here and building with us and connecting with us and working with us? We love you guys' culture. We see you on TV. We hear your music. We appreciate your contributions, right, to the world, to society. But why don't you come here to where you're from and build upon those things with us? So that's more what we hear on the ground.
So you see, listeners, here is an African who happened to have been born in America but has returned to his homeland, to our homeland, and he has no reason to lie to you about the sentiments that continental Africans have towards you. But yet you have Africans in America who are telling you to not align yourselves with Africans in the continent, and that has to stop. Here we are, we're talking to a brother who was actually repatriated, and he can tell you, this is his words, not mine, he can tell you that it's not that way on that side. So why are we being this way? That's my question to the listeners. Mahdi,
and if I can, I just want to build even on that. I think that the reason, and not for nothing, that reason is a problem on both sides. And the reason at hand is the information gap. I think that is the reason why African Americans are either they really don't know anything about the continent, or B, they're misinformed about the continent. Is the exact same thing happening to people here. The information gap is not just on the American side of the ocean. Here as well, people have very, very, very little information about the U.S. and our issues, or they're extremely misinformed. So like I said a little while ago, most of the people here, they only know Black Americans through our music,
Right.
which is typically rap, right, and hip hop, and our movies and films, which don't always show us in the best light, right?
Right.
So even or they show us in an extravagant light that's not realistic,
Right.
right? So then you get the mentality. People here have the mentality that all of us are rich, and we're all wearing diamond chains and driving Lamborghinis and having bottles popping, right?
Right.
That's what they see of us, right? They watch these different reality shows, and the internet is here. You can get on YouTube and watch Real Housewives of Atlanta and all that stuff, right? And they think that, oh man, those Black Americans over there living rich, they living good, they doing it up, right? So a lot of them don't even know that many of us live in ghettos and are on in situations that are not productive for us. Many of them don't know about schools closing all over the U.S. and mass incarceration. Many of them don't even know about Jim Crow and segregation. Many of them don't know anything about these types of struggles that we face in the Americas, the same way that African Americans don't know about many of the productive and upstanding things about Africans, right? So in America, the only thing we're told about Africa is poverty, war-torn, disease, malaria and Ebola and Boko Haram. These are the things that are perpetuated to us over and over and over in the media, the movies. Even we watch comedy movies that include African characters. Often those African characters are irritating, or we look at people like Michael Blackson, right? You see him in the movie, he's like the irritating guy that you don't want to be around, right? So these types of stereotypes keep us thinking that that's what all Africa's like. Most African Americans don't know that you come here and you will find some of the sharpest Africans ever. We're talking about people with biochemistry degrees. We're talking about people who own major manufacturing companies, telecom companies, banks, huge hedge funds. We're talking about billionaires living here in Africa. We're talking about, people who are making millions and millions of dollars and investing it into their communities, right? So we have this notion that Africa is still just dependent on aid, right? And maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, a lot of Africa was in that situation. But what the media is not telling us is that there's a lot more being contributed from Africans. Africans themselves, even in the diaspora, send $50 billion a year from the U.S. back to Africa, right? Back to their families, back to their homes and their communities, right? So these are some of the things that we don't hear about and we see in Africa and the U.S. Even you watch movies like Coming to America, right? And they see that, this guy is working in a specific job, and, you get this notion like, he's a bumbling idiot maybe, right? But 9 times out of 10, that guy that you see working behind the counter at CVS, or, doing some kind of, what we would call a low, end service job, 9 times out of 10, that guy is feeding 2 families or more.
Right.
That guy is taking care of 2 or 3 households. That guy is, sending money back to build his farm, or he's got a 2, 3, 4-story house already that he's building onto with that CVS check, right? So we look at this guy like, he's just a bumbling idiot that's working behind the counter. That guy's got his goals, and he's focused, and he's working on developing his community. And that's something that a lot of us are not familiar with as African Americans. So we just have to really communicate more with each other. When you see that guy, try to get around his accent. Yeah, he's got an accent because he speaks 3 or 4 languages.
Yep.
right? This guy speaks multiple languages in a community where you probably only speak one, right? So, humble yourself a little bit, right? Get around the accent and ask that guy about where he's from. Ask that guy about his community. Ask him, what is he working towards, right? Ask him what his challenges in his community and how you can be of use in his community where he's from, right? Ask him how he can help facilitate getting you to Africa to visit or, relocate. If we start doing this more, we'll be able to connect more on an intellectual playing field rather than based upon stereotypes and stigmas that have been given to us by people who have no interest in making us look at our best.
Right. I want to go to a commercial break, and on the other side, I want to talk to you specifically about the work that you're doing in Africa. But before I do any of that, I want to ask you a question. In your time there, have you been familiar with any Africans who were leaving Senegal to come to America for, whatever reason? Have you known Africans? Sure. Okay. You hear on this side, and I'm from the Caribbean, like I told you, I could tell you right now, there's no vetting process out of the Caribbean to determine if you're going to be some kind of sellout or race trader in America. But I just want to make it clear for the listeners. In your experience with the Africans who have left Senegal to come to America, is there some vetting process to make sure that when they leave Africa, they have a dislike for the Africans in America?
Is there a vetting process to encourage them to dislike African Americans?
Yes.
Nah, I've never heard of a process like that. No.
Yeah. Now, in your mind, you're saying that's a ridiculous question, but it's the ridiculous stuff that's being said to Africans in America. So I just want my listeners to hear how silly the whole concept is that Africans or African Caribbeans are being vetted before they leave their countries to come to America and be a traitor to the race. It's just ridiculous, people. And here you have this brother telling you.
What people are misconstruing as a vetting process is more similar to what I was just describing a little while ago. For instance, for a lot of Africans, number one, to get to America, there is a very stringent process. But that screening process is to make sure that individual can A, take care of himself, B, be held accountable for, meaning somebody can vouch for him, and C, to make sure that whatever he does while he's in the country is productive.
Yes.
He's in school, he's working, he's married to somebody who's upstanding, etc. And not for nothing, the Africans that acquire that permission have spent a lot of investment on it.
Yes.
Do not be fooled. It's not like how an American can buy a plane ticket and fly anywhere in the world. Coming from here, it's not easy. We know people here who tried 3, 4, 5, 7 times to acquire those kind of visas and permissions, and it's very costly. It's very time consuming. And what they expect on the other side of that coin is productivity, right? I've just spent my life savings on this, visa so that I can go to this university that I want to go to in the U.S. or so that I can work at this, place in the U.S. or whatever. So when they get there, a lot of times what they find there is not really what they expected productive-wise.
Right.
Okay? And we even prepare, folks from here for that before they come. We had a gentleman who worked for our organization here for 3 years. We taught the guy English. He was in our first English class we started here. A student of mine, his name was Ahmed Bassum, a very good and productive young man. But one of his goals was to go to the U.S., study, and come back. And he tried year after year for this visa. Spent tons of time and energy on it. And then when he got to the U.S., they sent him to somewhere out in Utah or Nebraska,
Oh,
right?
boy.
They put them somewhere way out in the,
Yeah.
in the country somewhere, right? And a part of that is because the U.S. government or the people who are in charge of those types of visas and where you go, they only want those incoming Africans to see, right, that perfect image of America. They don't want them to see, the communities that we live in. They don't really want that, right? And it's not that the African himself doesn't want it, but a lot of the systems that send them there, the schools that bring them, et cetera. So we just have to really just communicate with each other more and know the challenges that we face to even get on these on the other side of that coin. I really just encourage everybody, if you know an African in your school, in your workplace, in your community, you probably see that guy or that girl every day. You ignore them, you roll your eyes when you hear the accent, but I really encourage you to talk to them. Find out, what difficulties they had to face to get there just to study, what they wanted to study in the school they wanted to go to. These things are things that we got to understand about each other so that we can, build better alliances and relationships.
And move forward, yeah. Mahdi, I'm going to take a quick commercial break here. Please stay on the line.
Sure.
On the other side, we're going to talk all about what you have been doing since you've landed back home, okay?
Great.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions. Black people face one problem: the problem of ignorance. This is why those who opposed us stole us from our parents, disconnected us from our continent, and enforced on us illiteracy. But now the ignorance is self-inflicted. We send our children to their machines. We detach ourselves from our motherland, and we don't read meaningful literature. Consciousness is a series of stages. The sooner we get to one, the sooner we are ready for the higher. The Pro-Black Compendium accelerates the beginner to the advanced and provides for the advanced an unparalleled breadth. This is the sort of book your enemies do not want you to read, but our ancestors would insist you read twice. Peace Seeker, this is Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, and we need power. Power will not be handed to us. We need to build power. But in order to build power, we need a power blueprint. You need to study the best blueprints available. You have Gardners. You have Wilsons. You have Williams. You have mine. Now, you'll have Cooks. Carlos A. Cooks was Garvey's best student, the greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966. Yes, the greatest. Yet Whitey doesn't want you to read his blueprint. Cook's blueprint isn't religious. Cook's isn't for integration. Cook's isn't for communism. Cook's isn't even for anti-blacks. Cook's blueprint is for Africa. And Cook's blueprint is the unknown blueprint that was the basis of black power as we know it today. When you say buy black, you're talking about Cooks. When you say black is beautiful, you're talking about Cooks. When you say Malcolm got something right, you're talking about Cooks. But Cook's blueprint was lost, and Whitey is hiding that blueprint behind a $1,000 paywall. He's hiding solutions from you, telling you you need to take out a small loan to get the information that can liberate you. Whitey does not want you to have solutions to your problems, but you need solutions. You need power. I will give you the Carlos A. Cooks Reader, valued over $1,000 at a 98% discount, $15. Send $15 to cash.me/$ABS only with the subject Carlos and your email address, and I'll send you the ebook. We need power. You need blueprints. Start building today.
Greetings, family. This is Koku, host of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. In case you didn't know, we have an online book club called the Bitter Medicine Book Club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will have a call-in show and book discussion. This is a great, dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. They say if you want to keep anything away from black people, put it in a book. Don't allow this to be true. Head over to bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace and blessings.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Koku, and today I'm speaking with RJ Mahdi, an African-American who repatriated to Senegal, West Africa. He's the founder of Mahdi Media and the Made in Africa Project, and he's on the show today. Right now, we're going to discuss the things that he's been doing while back home on the continent. Mahdi, tell us. First of all, let's talk about Mahdi Media.
Mahdi Media is so again, my intentions to move to Senegal were made long before we actually made our repatriation. And one of the things that I prepared myself for years before coming was to be able to create media. And that was an initial goal of mine, because when I was here 17 years ago, I could see the large deficit in media capabilities here, media quality, also the lack of clear media that would tell the truth about what was happening here. I could see that even as a youth. So for many years, I knew that I wanted to develop skills in media and be able to come back and use those skills to share knowledge and information about here. So we initially started Mahdi Media as a way to create an English media for the city that we were living in, Medina Bay, which is the I Am Medina Bay project. And that project was specifically for that city to give a clear understanding of what life was like for specifically African Americans who live here. So like I said, there are a lot of African Americans who are living here for years, and they also have a story to tell. So we wanted that story to be told through our media. So we created that docuseries, a series of episodes that, just kind of went along with these different African Americans in Medina Bay, and let them share their experiences and how they enjoyed it here. And that docuseries did very well. Was supported, highly by especially the Muslim and specifically the Tijani community that are familiar with Medina Bay, or those who are seeking information about the Islamic culture here and from an African American standpoint. That specific media led into other factors, and we began making videos in media, not just about Medina Bay and the news and the things that were happening there, but about Senegal on a grander scale. And that's when we began the docuseries Africa is for Africans. And that specifically details the interactions of African Americans on an economic scale here in the country of Senegal specifically, how they interact with investments and products and these different things when they come and tour or when they travel here for business, et cetera. And that series also took a nice flight. Now, aside from that, Mahdi Media, we manage dozens of pretty popular social media accounts as well that share pro-African, pan-African media that connects the two, that gives a clear look at things that are happening here on social media. So we've got pages that have hundreds of thousands of followers. I think our largest page has about 200 going on 250,000 followers. We've got several other pages over 100,000 followers, and so on and so forth. And these pages, all serve different purposes. Some of them promote women empowerment. Some of them promote Islam in Africa. Some of them promote just the moral and, if I can say, character building side of Black empowerment. And they also are able to engage the public, and specifically African Americans, about their views on these different topics, right? So we're able to show them scenes of Africa that they've never seen, and then get their feedback. What do you think about this? Have you ever seen this? Did you know this about Africa? Or educating them on other, different values and being, of some impact to their social standings. So the media gets quite a bit of interaction, quite a bit of views. We try and keep it fresh so that, folks are able to always refer to it, as a source for updated, realistic views and understanding the information about the continent and about our people.
And the listeners can check all that out at madeinafricaproject.com?
Sure. Our main site is madeinafricaproject.com.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Because if you go, this is to the listeners, if you go on YouTube and you look up Africa is for Africans, that hashtag, you can find Mahdi's YouTube account, and you could see a lot of videos, man. Like I see you had one where like a comedian a comic book writer returned to Senegal, or he visits Senegal, and you show
just
like
a few months ago, a few weeks ago. I'm sorry.
And you also show like aspects of you and your family's life, living in the continent and stuff like that. That I think everyone should check out. I think a lot of it, as far as those of us in the diaspora, I think you fear the unknown, and maybe fear is too strong of a word, but you stay away from what you don't know. And so exactly. I think the point of this episode of the podcast and speaking with you is to let the listener know here in America and the Caribbean that it's okay. You can do what this brother did, and we can go home. At least we can go home and invest, if not live, but we can invest in Africa. We can,
just that it's possible.
Just that it's possible.
I think a large part of our suffering and lack of economic standing in our other environments in the West is just due to the lack of options and opportunities. We're often pushed into a small box. We're given very few industries that we're allowed to succeed in, or at least on a grand scale. And what that creates is an environment of desperation. So, because we have very little opportunities, we resort to, sometimes criminal activities, or we resort to less than upstanding practices, or we resort to crab in a barrel mentality to fight for the little resources that may be available. So I think that a large part of changing that mentality is just informing the people of options and opportunities. You have other options. Like you say, it is possible. Maybe it's not for everybody. I hear a lot of people, "Oh no, I'm good. I prefer America," or okay, great. So you feel like you have a chance there, and you have the resources you need, and you're comfortable, you're safe. Okay, great. But there are other people who are, really looking for added resources and opportunities to utilize themselves or pass down to their children, to extend to their communities, and that is the reason we do what we do.
So the other initiative you have is the Made in Africa project, and this is the one that first caught my eye about you and put me on to you. Tell us about the Made in Africa project.
So the Made in Africa project, it began as an export opportunity for the local artisans and creators of products here on the ground. So it started out export. Now, which is funny, we think of ourselves more as importers of mental and economic resources for the continent. So, with the media that we put out, there's an equal and sometimes even greater response coming back towards us of people who are looking to get involved, to use their skills here on the continent, to invest, to relocate, to bring their children to study, et cetera, et cetera. So, we help to facilitate that as best we can with the resources that we've developed over the years here. So we assist in the brokering of land for those people who want to come and purchase land. It's one of those things that we're really hesitant to do because, again, we've had so many stigmas, right? Africa's, maybe there's somebody's going to scam me, or,
Right.
We can't trust it, or, et cetera, et cetera. So we provide that extra level of, security and assurance to help you to do your due diligence, to invest with credible sources here on the ground. If you plan to visit, we help to facilitate those, right, to make it a lot easier on you with the language difference and those types of things. So again, it's turned into more of an import program, right? We're importing mental capital and economic capital into the African economy, bringing these progressive thinkers, like you said, like the founder of Brother Man Comics, who is an icon in the Black community, going back to the early 90s, creating one of the only all-Black comic books that we've ever seen. And, being that he's a Black creator from the Black community, creating something for the Black community, he's held a high esteem as, an iconic figure. His books are now featured in the Smithsonian Museum of African American History. He worked on, Disney movies and Cartoon Network and tons of, really popular shows and movies that we've all seen and heard of. But for him to come here for the expressed purpose of lending his talent in graphic design and in art and in, these fields to the young people here to leave an impact, is something that we take, pride in being able to facilitate. If you can see the faces on the children when they have an American, highly experienced and talented artist come into their school and spend time, teaching them things that, will build their creative mentality and inspire them to go on and create their own figures and characters and use their own imagination to bring about these things, it's impactful. And we've seen that dozens of times, not just with that brother. We've had people come and work directly with students and teaching them English and teaching them business development. We had last year a young lady who was a Fulbright scholar come here. Howard University alumni, Fulbright scholar, came here, spent I think about 10 months with us teaching young women business development through a business incubator that we do for young women here in Senegal. And she spent, a great amount of time, investing in these young women and developing them, helping them set up bank accounts and, social media accounts and, all different types of necessities for their businesses. And then once they were finished taking that course, they were awarded startup funding to pay for their business. And now they're one of our main suppliers of goods that we export to the diaspora. As a matter of fact, we're sending out about 40 pounds worth of the natural goods that they make moringa here this week.
Oh, wow.
So these are the kinds of impacts that we as African Americans coming from the diaspora are able to bring here and be useful. Again, we have another sister here, an African American, who owns a school and a boarding house where she houses dozens of American children, and she helps them to learn themselves here on the ground. These are things we see all the time. So we want to let people, our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, know that you are extremely useful here. Your intellectual capital is very appreciated here. It's very necessary. And, when you talk about life purpose, right, you talk about fulfillment, that's something that you can feel after you've impacted here. When you brought something here of value and people thank you and they appreciate you and they show you that what you did was, good for them, that's how you get to sleep at night knowing that you've used what you know and what you have to benefit others. And we see that all the time. So it's something that we want to keep going.
Man, I hope the listener understands just how heavy this is and just how, monumental an achievement this is. You came from the U.S. and you were able to do all of these amazing things, man. What is your inspiration, really? What's your day-to-day inspiration?
My inspiration again is just being one to create opportunities and allow people to have options. So our main goal here on the ground and for many years has been to create a totally sustainable community in which African Americans and others of the diaspora can come here and have a safe, sustainable environment to build and live in of our own. And for years, we've done tons of research and connected with tons of administrations and institutions and worked with all kinds of investors and interested parties to come up with ways to facilitate that the best. So just now at the first of the year, as we go into this year of return in 2019, we've unveiled a plan of that project where we intend to acquire about 600 hectares of land for the development of that Repatriate city, a place where we can integrate with locals and learn from each other and work together, a place where we can collectively own the institutions and organizations and businesses of that city, and a place where we can feel proud about laying our roots and leaving land and homes and wealth to our children. So, when it comes to our, ultimate inspiration or motivation or what drives us on a day-to-day basis is accomplishing something that for many generations has been a goal of our parents and grandparents, dating all the way back to the Harlem Renaissance and Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. We feel a duty to continue. And even if we don't reach our full goal, we'll know that, we gave an effort that impacted so many people and inspired so many people to at least pick up, and carry on whatever we leave when we leave here. So, that's what our goal is right now. We're building a city. We've named it Al-Kabalon, after the original name of the African continent. Mm-hmm. And we intend to be able to lodge up to 10,000 families in that city. and facilitate all of the economic needs of that town from within that town while impacting that town and the surrounding region, and eventually the continent and the diaspora. And we just unveiled that project, and we're welcoming people to get involved with it. We have created an economic development group, so different business owners and high net worth individuals who are all mutually invested in that city, and we're allowing additional professionals to join that group and to be a part of its development for the next 100 years. So we're putting in plans today that should carry our community and our families into the next century, and thinking forward even after that.
Well, I intend to keep in contact with you because I would like to know how can I invest or contribute not only to your initiative, but how could I invest in Africa as well? I have a question for you. You might not know this, but on this podcast, I interview a lot of community organizers here in America, in the Black communities. And this is the first time I've spoken to someone who was an organizer with his feet planted in the continent. One of the things I try to get across to my listeners is that whenever you see someone doing positive works in the community, positive works for the people, the first question you must ask them is, how can I help? So, do me a favor and speak directly to the listeners in this instance and tell them, how can they help?
So there's multiple ways and countless ways really, but I'm gonna just give you a few. For those who would like to just contribute, we have set up a GoFundMe, which is GoFundMe.com/Al-Kabalon Development Fund, FUND. Al-Kabalon Development Fund on GoFundMe, and you can contribute, whatever you have available to contribute there. You can also read a lot more about the project and our intentions and resources there. For those who would like to purchase land or get involved as one of the businesses that will be developed in our city, or for those who would like to invest in Africa or Senegal, period, and would like to join our investors club or get consultation and facilitation of those types of goals for you, you can visit our website, madeinafricaproject.com, and reach out to us there. We respond right away. We're excited to get on the phone with you and discuss how you can be beneficial and how you can benefit. And aside from that, I think that the biggest way to get involved, from a distance or without financial input, is to just share our media, share our content, share our videos, tell a friend about it, refer people. We live in a time when access to information is becoming easier. We're able to share things, around the world within seconds, right? So we call you guys to take a part in that. Go to our YouTube, find a video, share it to your social media. Tell a friend, hey, check this out. If you know people who are in the Pan-African circles or who are looking for progressive opportunities, send them our way. We look forward to that kind of collective building, and we hope that you all engage us in that as well.
And that YouTube channel is RJ Mahdi. Mahdi.
Yep.
RJ Mahdi. So,
absolutely.
One last question from me here. For those people who are on the fence or who have been thinking about repatriation, is there a way they can communicate with you in terms of getting schooled on what to do, how to do it? Who can they come by when they land on the continent, etc.?
Yeah, sure. And our investors club takes care of pretty much all of that. We do assist with finding homes, land, property. We can facilitate those type of deals for you,
Okay.
even if you're in the diaspora or from afar. We do help with language development. We're actually creating an online course right now for the local languages and culture. That should be released here in the next 30 days or so in February.
Okay.
In addition to that, we also help with business development. So if you want to know how you can use your skills here on the ground, or what types of business opportunities are available to you, again, we have dozens and dozens and dozens of wonderful resources and opportunities for you. We help many different members of the diaspora to get invested. We've got right now clients who are invested in agriculture, farms, clients who are invested in poultry. We've brokered tons of land and real estate deals. We helped a couple last year start a coffee shop, a franchise of coffee shops, Wi-Fi shops,
really,
and so on and so forth. We opened a library here last year with our partnership with Give One Project. We opened a school here in Medina Bay with other partners, and these types of things are coming direct from the diaspora, direct from people who just want to get involved here on the ground and make an impact. So we can definitely help facilitate those for you as well. So, shoot us a message, madeinafricaproject.com. Anything that you're, interested in. We're excited to help clarify and make it make sense to you. Or you can also follow me on social media, in particular Instagram at King RJ Mahdi, Mahdi.
I know I said that was going to be my last question, but it just dawned on me I should ask this thing. Before I ask this very last question, remember I mentioned having a think tank, and we're working on a curricula for, an African-centered curricula. I'd like to invite you to join that think tank. It's a WhatsApp group, so it doesn't take much to join.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll send you the invite after we speak. But the one and very last question I have to ask you before I let you go, brother, is in the West, we always hear about the Chinese occupation of Africa. I'm from the Caribbean, like I told you. In my country, the Chinese have been, making their presence known there, all across the Caribbean. What is the situation where you're at in Senegal? Is the Chinese a big presence there?
Absolutely. The Chinese, in my opinion, are filling gaps on the continent that nobody else is filling. And until those gaps are filled by us, for us, they're going to continue to dominate in the industries and sectors and environments that they're in.
Right.
So, for instance, the continent has a huge deficit in the ability to transform its local goods, right? Its agriculture, its produce, right? There aren't enough factories that are turning tomatoes into tomato sauce and ketchup. There aren't enough factories that are turning mangoes into mango butter and mango juice, right? And these products, either A, they'll spoil and you lose a huge amount of them every year, or B, somebody has to transform them into something.
Right.
And the Chinese are doing that. And in a way, you have to say it's necessary because no one else is doing it. We're not doing it, right? But also, you can see where the availability, or not the availability, but the necessity for us to be here and develop, right? So don't look at it as if China is colonizing Africa, because for a while, or to a certain degree, China's kind of holding Africa up, right? So, every place has to have some type of allies, right? The U.S. does business with other countries, and everywhere does, right?
Yeah.
So for Africa, China is probably the only similarly fair business partner, right? So the Europeans came, they pillaged, they raped, they murdered, they colonialized. The Americans came, they took advantage, they, et cetera, right? The Chinese are the only ones who came, offered business solutions, and didn't use that as a way to oppress the people or to encroach upon the culture of the people or make you change your, your religions and these things, etc. Right? So they're serving a purpose. Should they be here forever or should they dominate here? No. I think that we need to learn from what they've done here, and we need to hurry and get here and begin filling those roles ourselves. And then we can say, oh, China, you got to go, right? But if we're sitting at home on our couch in cushy middle America, right, on furniture we bought from Ashley Furniture, watching a TV that came from Japan, driving a car that came from Germany or wherever, right? We can't sit and whine about Africa partnering with China. So when those people who have that criticism get involved and say, you know what, I'm gonna take over this manufacturing industry. I'm going to invest in telecommunications. So Samsung is not the only cell phone being used here, right? I'm gonna get into the major sectors that they're investing in so that we can kick them out. Right. So when we see more of that from the diaspora and from even continental Africans investing in those sectors, then we can, be more critical of the people who are holding that spot. But, temporarily, it's kind of like, like let's say you see somebody and they get, injured or shot, right? And they're bleeding out. And a guy who you don't like comes over and compresses the wound and is keeping that person alive, right? And then you're sitting across the street just watching. You're just sitting down. You're chilling. You're eating popcorn. You're like, what? How does this guy get to save your life? Right? How dare you let this guy, compress the wound and let
That's a good point.
But you're sitting there watching while he does it. You're not here. How can you, criticize this guy? So we have to be the ones compressing those wounds and rehabilitating our continent.
Excellent analysis there. You actually opened my eyes to something there. So Senegal's major export is oil and gold, right? But agriculturally,
not gold, no. Agriculture, peanuts,
peanuts,
oil,
okay.
like peanut oil,
cooking
oil, and fish. Huge fishing industry.
Right. 'Cause I know
that's another industry that the Chinese are moving in on, simply because Senegal doesn't have the ships and the capability to go deep enough into the ocean and fish its own ocean, right? So you have all these miles and miles of coastline, but there's no efficient enough boats to go deep and get those fish. So now they're leasing those waters to other countries like Asia, China and Morocco and neighboring countries are now fishing in Senegal's waters because Senegal can't. Same thing with offshore drilling and oil. All right, they know there's oil there, but they don't have the capabilities to go drill for it. They don't have the technology, so they have to lease that oil to a company who has the facility and the resources to do it.
Yeah.
So again, we have to be the ones to come and say, hey, look, I'm going to invest in that. And I'm going to compete with these other countries and companies for those contracts. I want to come and lay the roads so you don't have to get France to do it. I'm going to come and create jobs so people are not having to run to the U.S. or to Europe, through the Mediterranean Sea, killing themselves to look for jobs, right?
Yeah.
Think about how many African Americans in the diaspora own businesses, companies. They're doing well, right? But they're not thinking about the fact that, I can hire people on the continent, right? We even outsource a lot of our services to India, right? For tech services and things like that. We outsource, customer service, kind of jobs and things like that. But what if you could outsource those here to the continent, even if you don't move here, right? What if you can hire people on the continent to make your phone calls for you, or to ship out your products, or to handle your logistics, or to oversee your web development? Right, so we have to start thinking like this.
Excellent. I mean, again, a lot of times when I do these interviews, people get a kind of a business masterclass out of it too, and this is no exception. I mean, right there, you open my eyes, and hopefully you open the listeners' eyes and hearts and heads to looking into Africa and investing and seeing what gaps we can fill. Because that's an interesting thing that you just mentioned about the fishing and and not having the capabilities as far as ships. In fact, you also mentioned the oil. You know, where I'm from, they found oil deposits a couple of years ago. And the deal is so bad because we don't have the technology to do it ourselves. The deal is so bad. I think we get back 8 to 12% of whatever the profits are from the oil in our own country. You know, and it's all because we don't have the capabilities. And this is what we need to be doing as Africans in the diaspora.
That's right.
You know, filling these gaps so that no one else could come and fill the gap for us.
That's right. That's right. And then we can, be a part of the decision making about who gets to come in and who doesn't.
Yes. RJ Mahdi, I appreciate you showing up on the show today. This has been
Thanks so much
excellent
for having me,
talk. This is the first podcast of the year, the first episode of the year. I'd like to stay in touch. In fact, I'm going to send you some of my details after we finish speaking. Again, you have the final word to the listeners.
In final word, I just want to let everybody out there know that, it's possible and it's time to come home and develop and build and unite as all of our elders and leaders and past messengers have told us. The time is now, and we're here for you when you're ready to come.
Go and follow RJ Mahdi on social media, Instagram and YouTube. And also make sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And this has been another episode of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Thank you, RJ Mahdi, for appearing on the show today. And I hope we're able to speak again in the future.
Inshallah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, family.
Right.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.